1944. The Dimapur to Kohima to Imphal Road, northeast India. 130 miles of winding hill track, and the only supply route for over 150,000 British and Indian troops of the 4th Corps. Japanese forces from the 31st Division have cut it. Felled trees, captured lorries overturned across bends, anti-tank guns sighted for point-blank fire down the road, infantry dug into both flanks. Unarmoured convoys trying to push through are being destroyed. This is one of the most effective Japanese tactics in Burma, and it is bleeding the 14th Army dry. The solution, according to every senior commander in the theatre, is tracked vehicles, tanks, M3 Lees and M4 Shermans. In the jungle and hills of early Burma, where roads are few and monsoon mud swallows trucks whole, wheeled armoured cars are considered not suited to the theatre. Multiple reconnaissance units have already abandoned their armoured cars, replacing them with jeeps and universal carriers. The 45th Reconnaissance Regiment has been converted wholesale into Chindit long-range penetration infantry. The 7th Cavalry Regiment has traded in its armoured cars for Stuart light tanks. This story is about a vehicle everyone wrote off, and why Burma's roads made that a mistake. The Humber Armoured Car was never supposed to exist. In 1938, Guy Motors of Wolverhampton designed a welded armoured car body, when the War Office insisted that welded armour construction could not be done. Guy's engineers did it anyway, at their own expense, pioneering a technique that eliminated the deadly problem of rivet spalling, where rivets inside the crew compartment turn into projectiles when armour is struck. Guy built 101 armoured cars before the war's demand exceeded their small factory's capacity. After Dunkirk, production had to scale. Guy transferred their jigs and welding designs to the Roots Group. Roots took Guy's armoured body and married it to the Carrier KT-4 artillery tractor chassis, a four-wheel drive vehicle with its engine relocated to the rear. The result was an ungainly hybrid. Despite known faults carried over from the Guy design, the War Office ordered immediate production. The vehicle was branded Humber to avoid confusion with the tracked Universal Carrier, and in 1945, that ungainly hybrid would be out in front of Shermans, leading the most dramatic armoured advance of the Burma campaign. According to production records, Roots built approximately 5,400 Humber armoured cars across 4 marks between 1941 and 1944 at the Luton Works of Commer Cars Limited and facilities in Coventry. The early marks, the Mark I and Mark II, carried a 15mm Bisa machine gun, a big, awkward beast by armoured car standards. Over 6 feet long and weighing more than 125 pounds, it was prone to stoppages, and its armour-piercing performance disappointed in trials. Both marks used a 3-man crew. The Mark III introduced a significantly larger turret with a dedicated wireless operator, bringing the crew to 4. This freed the commander from radio duties, but the 15mm Besa remained, and its problems remained with it. The Mark IV fixed the gun problem. Roots replaced the 15mm Bisa with the American 37mm M6 gun, the same weapon fitted to the M3 Stuart light tank and the M8 Greyhound armoured car. The larger gun ate the wireless operator's space, forcing a return to a 3-man crew, a driver, a gunner, and a commander. But the firepower increase more than compensated. The 37mm could fire armour-piercing rounds, high explosive rounds for fortified positions, and canister rounds for massed infantry. Each canister shell contained 122 precision-machined steel pellets that formed a shotgun-like cone lethal to exposed troops at ranges up to 250 yards. The Mark IV weighed 7.1 tonners. Depending on source and mark variant, top speed is often given as 45 to 50 miles per hour and range as 200 to 250 miles. Armour thickness reached 14 to 15mm at the front and 10mm on the sides, enough to stop rifle and machine gun fire, not enough to stop a dedicated anti-tank round. According to service reports, the vehicle was described as rugged, reliable and operationally sound, with the only reported defect being a short engine life. Crews particularly liked it as a command vehicle because it offered more internal room than the alternative Daimler armoured car. The problem this vehicle solved in Burma was about roads. Burma's motorable road network was extremely sparse. Dense tropical jungle, mountain ranges reaching 8,000 to 10,000 feet, along the Indian border, river valleys, and swampland dominated the landscape. The few roads that existed were everything. They were the only way to move guns, armour, vehicles and supplies, and the Japanese knew it. Same pattern every time: a bend, a block, a gun, and infantry on the flanks. At Taukian in March 1942, a single roadblock nearly destroyed the entire Burma army. The headquarters, the 17th Indian Division, and the 7th Armoured Brigade were all trapped. Multiple infantry assaults failed to clear it. The garrison only escaped when the Japanese voluntarily withdrew. During the Imphal and Kohima battles of 1944, roadblocks severed the 4th Corps from supply and reinforcement for weeks. Unarmoured convoys on these roads were defenceless. Something had to escort them. Something fast enough to respond, armoured enough to survive small arms fire, and armed enough to suppress ambush positions. If you are enjoying the way strange engineering decisions end up deciding battles, subscribe, because now we are going into the Humbers' best day in Burma. The turning point came in late 1944. After the 14th Army shattered the Japanese 15th Army at Imphal, British and Indian forces crossed the Chindit River and broke out onto the dry belt of central Burma, the Irrawaddy Plain, where the road network was better and the terrain was open. For 2 years, armoured car crews had precious little chance to operate in their dedicated role. Now they could. The 16th Light Cavalry was India's oldest armoured regiment, formed in 1776. It was also the first Indian armoured regiment commanded by an Indian officer, Lieutenant Colonel Jayanto Nath Chowdhury, who would later become the 5th Chief of Army Staff of the Indian Army. Chowdhury took command in September 1944 and was twice mentioned in dispatches for gallant and distinguished services in Burma. His regiment was equipped with Humber Mark IVs and Daimler armoured cars, organised into armoured car troops, jeep-mounted motorised infantry, and self-propelled 3-inch mortar sections. In early 1945, the regiment received orders for Burma. Within 3 weeks, the 16th Light Cavalry covered 3,500 miles from Quetta to the banks of the Irrawaddy River. Only a wheeled unit could have moved that fast over that distance. General Slim personally complimented them for the speed of deployment. By February 15, 1945, they had rejoined the 255th Indian Tank Brigade. The battle that proved the Humbers' worth was Meiktila. On February 21, the 17th Indian Division, the Black Cats, with the 255th Tank Brigade, broke out of the Irrawaddy bridgehead at Nyangu and drove toward Meiktila, the critical Japanese supply hub in central Burma. The reconnaissance spearhead was a composite group called Tomforce. Armoured cars from the 16th Light Cavalry and PAVO Cavalry led the way, screening the entire advance. Tangtha fell on February 24. Thakpton airfield was captured that same afternoon. By February 28, 4 columns launched simultaneous attacks on Meiktila against approximately 4,000 Japanese defenders from the 168th Infantry Regiment. After the town fell, the Japanese counterattacked with elements of 3 divisions. General Cowan adopted an active defence, sending armoured columns, including the 16th Light Cavalry's Humbers, out of the town every day to strike the surrounding enemy. 5 columns sorted on March 5. A second series began on March 9. Japanese forces in Burma generally lacked effective anti-armour weapons, relying instead on infantry tactics that required soldiers to physically close with armoured vehicles. Against daily armoured sorties armed with 37mm guns and canister rounds, those tactics produced devastating Japanese casualties. At Wetlet on March 8, 1945, a column built around the 9th Battalion Border Regiment, Sherman tanks from the Royal Deccan Horse, and reconnaissance from the 16th Light Cavalry advanced northwest from Meiktila to strike a battalion of the Japanese 106th Infantry Regiment. According to accounts compiled by Brian Perrett in Tank Tracks to Rangoon, the armoured cars and carriers of the 16th Light Cavalry led the column into the engagement, covering tree lines with machine gun fire as infantry advanced into fortified village positions. Japanese heavy machine guns and a concealed 37mm anti-tank gun engaged the leading vehicles. A Daimler armoured car was hit and caught fire. Sherman tanks and 25-pounder artillery were called forward for direct support. The action lasted approximately 4 hours. After the Japanese began withdrawing from Meiktila on March 29, the 4th Corps advanced nearly 200 miles south toward Rangoon, with the 16th Light Cavalry screening ahead. Piaubwe, Tungu, Pyu and Pegu fell in a rapid succession. At Pegu from April 27 to the 30th, the Japanese mounted fierce resistance using anti-tank mines, improvised from aircraft bombs and suicide attacks with pole charges. The monsoon broke on May 2. Leading troops met the 26th Division, which had landed at Rangoon by sea through Operation Dracula, at Legu on May 6, 1945. The campaign was over. The 16th Light Cavalry earned 7 battle honours: Meiktila, capture of Meiktila, defence of Meiktila, Rangoon Road, Pegu 1945, Sitang 1945, and Burma 1942-45. Now consider the Humber against its Japanese equivalents. The most common Japanese armoured vehicle in Burma was the Type 95 Heigo light tank, weighing 7.4 to 8.1 tons, with a 37mm gun and armour of roughly 12mm. Its top speed reached 28 miles per hour with a range of approximately 130 miles. The Humber carried equivalent firepower while being significantly faster on roads and possessing substantially greater operational range. Against Japanese Type 94 and Type 97 tankettes, many armed only with 7.7mm machine guns, the Humber was overwhelmingly dominant. Its 37mm could destroy them at combat range, while their machine guns could not penetrate even the Humber's 10mm side armour. The American M8 Greyhound carried the same 37mm gun with slightly better frontal armour at 19mm. But American cavalrymen in Europe criticised its off-road performance as marginal, particularly in mud. I have found no solid evidence of M8 Greyhounds being used in the Burma campaign. British and Indian units largely relied on their own armoured cars for the theatre, and the Humber's advantages were specific to Burma's demands. Lower weight for crossing improvised wooden bridges that could not support heavy tracked vehicles. Reduced noise signature compared to tracked platforms, critical for reconnaissance. Simpler maintenance in a theatre where every spare part arrived by air from India. The Humber outlived nearly every tank it served alongside. After the war, over a dozen nations adopted it. India and Pakistan used them into the 1960s. In 1962, Indian Humbers were airlifted to Chushul at altitudes above 14,000 feet during the Sino-Indian War. Portuguese Humbers saw service in Africa, and then, on April 25, 1974, a 1942 vintage Humber Armoured Car rolled through the streets of Lisbon during the Carnation Revolution, helping overthrow a 48-year dictatorship. That gave the Humber a 32-year operational lifespan from manufacture to its last documented combat use. Lord Mountbatten once told the troops of the 14th Army that at home they were not forgotten, they had not even heard of them. The same could be said of the Humber, a vehicle the British establishment dismissed as not suited to Burma, built on an artillery tractor chassis from a company that no longer exists, crewed by Indian cavalrymen whose regimental history was split between 3 nations after partition. It was never glamorous. It was fast, reliable, and armed with the right gun for the theatre it fought in.